Now, before we move on to the next question, I would like to remind any viewers joining us that this is the Charlottesville City Council Candidates Forum on Environmental Issues, organized by the Sierra Club and local environmental organization co-sponsors. This event is nonpartisan, and all announced City Council candidates are participating this evening. Additionally, if anyone in the audience would like to submit a question, you can raise your card in the air and Dave or John will collect that. Now, for the third question from the co-sponsoring organizations, what ideas do you have about how Charlottesville can be encouraged to reuse, reduce, and recycle even more than we do already? Mr. Grady, you have 1.5 minutes.
Lead by example. As a father, husband, educator, I recycle. I have my nice 2 little red bins at home. I'm constantly putting in recycled materials. Got to make sure I put the right materials in there. It'd be nice to have I think the city does provide a sheet that shows you which materials to take. But the city takes that. When I have newspapers, I take to McIntyre Recycling Center, and first place in the schools to encourage the school systems to encourage recycling, provide bins in the schools. Also, businesses, provide them with recycled bins and things like that. As well as in the neighborhoods, we need recycling bins. It should be there so that people won't throw everything in the trash can.
Thank you. Mr. Lees.
So first thing, you need to figure out what you want to reduce, what you want to reuse, and what you want to recycle. Because if you're reducing something that's already at its bare minimum, it's not going to have much of an impact. But if you reduce something that has a massive impact, such as possibly today, everyone taking a shower at once for 20 minutes trying to cool down, you reduce that time, that's going to have the impact you want. For me, like I said before, move Charlottesville's trash collection system to a single pickup so that everything you put in will be pre-sorted, will just be sorted and dealt with. That way people are not only more likely to throw things out, but you're more likely to pick up recycled materials to begin with. The other thing that I would like to see as far as reducing and reusing and recycling is once you figure out what you need to do, go tell people how it affects them. Say your water bill could be $10 less if you did these things. Say your electric bill would be less if you raised the temperature in your house by X degrees. Those things have major impacts because it's in a metric that people understand intuitively. And if necessary, walk door to door. Don't send out a mailing. That's kind of counterproductive. Walk door to door and talk to people. That's how it works on a campaign trail. It's how it can work in a democracy.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Ms. Szakos on reducing, reusing, and recycling and how it can be encouraged here in Charlottesville.
I've been working for quite a while to encourage curbside composting, and our Public Works Department has gone from thinking, no, it's impossible, to really kind of looking at some possibilities. We now have a company in town that's starting to do it with larger customers, and we're keeping an eye on that, and I think that that is something that we'll be doing in the future. I also think that validated recycling is important. When we have vendors who pick up garbage and say that they're recycling, whether they're picking up only recycling or mixed recycling and garbage, we need to be able to get actual documentation of where that stuff is going. Because we need to know that our recyclables aren't being landfilled. We've recently done a pilot of covered containers for recycling. They're larger than the average little red pail, and they keep the materials dry. You can collect more at a time, and in the neighborhoods that we've done that, we've actually increased both the number of people recycling and the amount of stuff that's being recycled. We need to keep the McIntyre Recycling Center open, especially the reuse center there. We need to put recycling containers in all city offices and buildings. We need to continue to donate old computer equipment to groups that recondition and distribute them to people who need them. And to really kind of, ourselves as a city, utilize things like the Habitat store and Goodwill and make sure that people know about those resources.
Thank you. Mr. Weber on encouraging, reducing, reusing, and recycling here in Charlottesville.
Thank you. This is one area where I actually think Charlottesville does fairly well. People seem well educated and sensitive to the issues, and my experience with Public Works and dealing with them is they're fairly responsive. Call for one event to pick up, they come and do it fairly quickly. Having said that, there are people who don't get it, and unfortunately, in dealing with human nature, it's probably going to always be that way. So, if I were to give one catchphrase, it would be to say we've got to make it easy, effective, and transparent for everybody. And in that regard, I am a fan of technology and entrepreneurship. I think the Vanderlinder Recycle Center is at least a case study. I don't know for sure where it all goes, but they do claim to do the sorting for you. When he was coming online, city filed suit against him and deleted all that for a while. I assume the suit had some merit, but I don't know for sure. But if we're going to encourage people, like all of us, to build a better mousetrap, then we ought to at least allow them to catch some mice. If private enterprise can do it better than the government, then we ought to allow them to do it. I understand the exigencies of the city. We've got 4,300 people per square mile, and it's not just about environmental friendliness. We've got public health mandates that all the trash be collected, whether or not people can pay the fair market rates for it. Our goal is a clean city. We ought to at least make allies of everybody who wants to try to do that, rather than and public-private partnerships are part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Now, Mr. Bellamy, on reducing, reusing, and recycling, and encouraging it here in Charlottesville.
So when I think of Charlottesville, I think of a world-class city and one that's also very innovative. And I think we can have an alternative, innovative way to try and get more individuals to recycle. For many of you all, you already do it. But for those who don't, we got to give them some kind of incentive. So I was researching this question and I looked it up. In San Francisco, they made composting mandatory. So instead of dinner being scraped into the garbage, food scraps go into sealed food compost bins that get picked up by the city every day. And this report was done by Tree Hugger. And last year, they stated even before the law went into effect, it already seemed to be a success. Compost bins were handed out early, and garbage officials of this forward-thinking city were stunned by the amount of food waste that started streaming into the organic annex, where half of the city's food scraps went. The benefits is that it's trimmed garbage disposal costs for apartment buildings, Bay Area farms and vineyards get compost, and it doesn't cost much for the city. Landfill space is freed up, and garbage is significantly less smelly. Anyone who's ever jogged through a city in their neighborhood on garbage day can appreciate that. One other thing that I really think we could do, or we could look into, is something that they did in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So they had a cash back program, or recycle bank rewards program, which measures the amount of each household recycles and rewards them with points. Recycling rates went up 137%. It's actually amazing how many retailers and companies accept the recycle bank points. Whole Foods, Kashi, Rite Aid, Home Depot, and even McDonald's bought into the program. And it got kids, parents, and essentially the entire community recycling. Why can't we do that here? We can, and we will.
Thank you, Mr. Bellamy. Thank you. Mr. Farruggio.
Thank you. I think that Buddy was right in this. I think this is an area we do pretty well. Our citizens are pretty amazing. After the drought of 2012, when our water department in our city asked us to reduce our water consumption, we did an incredible job doing it. UVA stepped up, they fixed up a lot of their ailing systems, and I applaud them for the maintenance and upgrades that they did to their systems. Now we boast one of the lowest water consumption rates per capita in the country, and I think that's pretty amazing. How can we do better? One area I'm thinking of is 20-year-old students that are living off grounds around UVA. I can't imagine that's a high priority for them to separate their trash, so maybe there's a program that we can get working with them to do that. I think that's something. I know on my street, everybody has a recycling bin and they're always full. My family has two and they're always full, so we're working there. Other incentives that we could do, I was thinking about anything that we find that we're not doing good at, then maybe if we are doing good, maybe we can shift, reprogram money to other areas that can help in other areas. I think we should actually recycle carbon dioxide. We should plant some more trees, get some of that done. Seriously, I think there is one other important aspect, and that's I love this term, the embodied energy of a home. We should be recycling our houses. We should be using our housing and our housing policy a lot more effectively. These are houses that sit too small, unused, and we can recycle our houses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Fenwick, on reducing, reusing, and recycling.
Okay, that's the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And I see a lot of people out in the audience. And I have 3 words. The city does a great job already, but if you want to do better, join Project Transition. If you Google Project Transition, you'll see an organization that preaches this. They have every month a special meeting they call Skillshare. They teach you the things that my mother and father did when we were growing up. How to can, how to make clothes, how to make soap, all kinds of different things. My efforts in that area, I've done little videos on how to repair refrigerators, or how to keep from having to buy a new engine for your car. These catastrophic expenses that would just really really injure a family. There's things you can do to prevent this in many cases. But there's another R, and that's repair. And that's what I've made a living out of for almost 40 years, repairing older houses, bringing them back online. It's not just the housing that you can repair. It's things like bridges. It's things like the Belmont Bridge. We don't have to spend $20 million for a new bridge that's 40 years old. Europe has bridges hundreds of years old. UVA is now tearing down and replacing a bridge that has a date of 1934 on it. We can get a lot more use out of that bridge that's over there by repairing it and put the money into all the things we've been talking about. Transportation, we haven't talked about schools really, but children, crosswalks, I hear these funding requests all over town.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.